As we all know, Wall Street seems to only want to view Tesla as a car company. From that perspective, Tesla sold in the last 12 months 1.7 million cars and 7.5 million in total. If you view it in terms of cars, you might say the growth has slowed. But aren't electric vehicles just batteries with wheels? So why not consider how many batteries without wheels is Tesla also selling? Guess what? The energy storage business is seeing 154% growth year over year. Let's combine the two businesses and let's see what we have now. As a bonus, we'll also have the actual massive impact Tesla's having on the world. Stay tuned for that. Cern Basher is a chartered financial analyst who's currently running his own investment advisory firm called Brilliant Advice, providing wealth management services. Welcome, Cern. Thank you so much for joining me again. Appreciate you.
Hi, Herbert. It's good to be here.
Your videos are just killing it. People love that you put in a lot of the work. You actually do a lot of research. And we've done everything. I mean, we've done robotaxi and robots. You're called the bot bull. You analyze everything. So we're going back to the basics today. We're going to look at the energy storage plus cars. And I think you're a little upset because you see the Wall Street guys just talking about how cars aren't moving, but you have a different opinion. Tell us what we're going to look at here.
Yeah, it doesn't so much upset me. Actually, it kind of amuses me. So I
Yeah.
like to poke fun at Wall Street analysts a little bit. I respect what they do, but they do seem to be missing quite a bit with respect to Tesla.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do today is take a look at Tesla's energy business and the growth in energy, and then consider that if you consider energy products as vehicles without wheels.
Yeah.
Right. What does that look like for Tesla if you combine the auto business and these boxy vehicles, so to speak?
Yeah. I remember you did a chart one time. Can you tell me now, like what's the equivalent of a megapack battery? How many cars batteries is that? So a megapack battery, I understand, is like the size of a semi, right?
Yeah, the item itself fits on the back of a semi truck, and it was designed that way.
Yeah.
They probably would prefer to make them bigger if they could, but then they would have a
Mm,
shipping problem. So
mhm.
they were designed to be that size. As for the exact number of vehicle equivalents per megapack, that's a good question. But in my calculations, I used 75 kilowatt hours in terms of the vehicle equivalents and divided that by the total gigawatt hours of storage that were deployed. And so we'll see some charts on that.
All right, let's take a look. Thanks.
So in the first quarter of 2025, we've got total storage deployments. This is primarily megapacks, but also includes power walls of 10.4 gigawatt hours.
Mm.
It's the second best quarter ever for Tesla's energy business, trailing slightly behind fourth quarter of last year. And it's comfortably higher, really, than any other quarter, except perhaps of Q2 of 2024, which was also kind of a breakout quarter. Now, you can see here that storage deployed is a very lumpy number. And Tesla's revenue recognition policies around this are pretty clear, but yet very hard to predict where they're going to be in terms of deployments and even revenue quarter to quarter. So
Yeah.
the good news is the business is on a massive upswing, and we know
My
that from several data points.
my understanding is deployed means that the actual battery pack is now installed in a customer site. And all of this is with one factory, the Lathrop factory. And then this Q1, I understand that the Shanghai Megapack factory is built and it's in operation, but I think maybe just 1 month is worth of actual producing these packs, and I don't know how many is actually deployed as part of the Q1 number.
Some of the early megapacks from the Shanghai Gigafactory, or sorry, Megafactory, were shipped to Australia. Did they arrive there in time for them to be considered deployed? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But I think it is pretty much safe to say this is pretty much all from the Lathrop factory,
yeah, agreed.
plus
Yeah,
plus the power walls, of course.
yeah,
Yeah. So then if we look at it on a trailing 12-month basis, it reduces some of the lumpiness, right? So sort of rolling 12 months.
yeah.
And you can see that that is a pretty exciting trajectory. If Tesla Energy was a standalone company, there would be a lot of Wall Street analysts that would be extremely excited about what's going on here right now. And unfortunately, energy right now for a lot of analysts is either not their expertise or it's just too small for them to really say too much about.
Mhm.
But the good news is, as this business grows more, it becomes too big to ignore. And I think we're getting close to that point now.
And I think what you're going to show is that even just now with one megapack factory, right, Lathrop, you already are impacting the. This is the cool part. Like if you want to look at it as cars, let's take a look at it as car equivalents, and it's already impacting it. But imagine when Shanghai comes online this year. It is already online, but starts contributing to deployed, and then they're already building the third one. So this is just one. So this is going to be like skyrocketing pretty quickly. Yeah.
It has the potential to be over the next few quarters to see some really serious growth here. Yeah. Yeah. This is a chart that I like to look at just in terms of cumulative storage deployed. So this goes all the way back to Q4 of 2016. I'm not sure if there were any megapacks in existence or deployed before that. If there were, I didn't count those in here. But you can see that's pretty small in those early days.
Mhm.
But the cumulative deployments now are at about 73 gigawatt hours of storage deployed. We just did over 10 gigawatt hours in one quarter. And in the
Mhm.
last 12 months, we've done almost 38 gigawatt hours in the
Mhm.
last year. So, and by the way, as we'll see in a second, the capacity, the annual capacity for Tesla is higher than 73 gigawatt hours. So the cumulative lifetime deployments of storage devices is less than what Tesla's current capacity is.
Yeah,
So that tells us that we should expect a lot of growth to come in the
yeah,
next several quarters, next several years.
that's a good way to put it. So basically, almost all of it just came in the last fourth quarter, and the last 4 quarters. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had 3 really solid quarters of 10 gigawatt hours or close to it. Um, Q3, I guess, of last year was kind of the weak spot, relatively speaking, but even then, that was massively higher than any other quarter that preceded it,
Yeah.
except for the quarter that was immediately preceding it, which was 9.4 gigawatt hours. But you can certainly see that this business is reaching new levels almost quarter to quarter.
Wonderful.
Yeah. This is a chart that shows the trailing 12 months and the growth of the energy storage deployments each 12 months. And so right now, year over year, it's about 154% growth from this trailing 12 months versus the last. And so that's pretty solid. We should expect this to fluctuate. I wouldn't be particularly concerned if this drops off back down to the 100 or even 80%. It's just a function of the lumpiness of the business. But it is also possible too that this even accelerates higher from here.
Yeah. It's percentage growth. I mean, it's kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Percentage numbers tend to they can be a little bit deceptive. Sometimes low percentages might look like it's falling off of a trend, but you know what? That can change very quickly. And you can see that already in these numbers. We've had a couple of other periods here where we had 140%, 180% year over year growth. So that certainly
Mhm.
happened before. Yeah. This is the chart that shows the last 12 months energy deployments. Again, about 38 gigawatt hours relative to the current stated capacity of Powerwall's, which is about 10 gigawatt hours, the Lathrop factory, which is officially at 40, and the China Megapack factory, also officially stated at 40. So you get to 90 gigawatt hours of current capacity.
Wow.
Now, I think they're probably massively sandbagging the ultimate capacity of the China Megapack factory.
Yeah.
But for now, that's what it is. And so you can see here that over the last 12 months, their deployments are less than half of what their current capacity is. And this is why we're expecting really strong results out of Tesla's energy business over the next couple of years.
And I've already said it, but by the time you get up to here, uh, you're going to have the third factory in Texas coming up and
That's
going
right.
online probably within 9 months, a year from now.
Yeah, the nice thing about that is they don't have to build the building, they just need to put the equipment inside.
Yeah.
And it looks like the equipment that's necessary to build Megapacks is pretty simple compared to the equipment necessary to build a vehicle. It's a lot less complex.
Okay. So this is good. So this shows me that we're about, we can easily double the current production we have now uh, the deployment we have now, just based on the existing capacity that's available now. That's great.
Yeah. The facility in China and Shanghai for the Megapacks looks like a massive facility. It would be shocking for me if the ultimate capacity is not a lot higher than this. The capacity there may actually be double what they're actually stating it is. Unless that facility was also designed to make something else that we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
But if it's truly designed just for Megapacks, then the capacity there probably is a lot larger than what they're telling us right now. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So that's the state of the energy business. And like I'm like most people, right? When you tell me mega packs and gigawatt hours, I don't know what that means. I don't know how big it is. And so I think what you're going to do is, well, let's tell it in the analogy of how many cars does that represent? And that's a good way to put it, because a car is really just it's a massive battery, and of course there's lots of an electric drivetrain. It's driven by computers and so forth, but you know simplistically it's a large battery and you put wheels on it. You could just take those same batteries, and you can put it into a stationary storage. And in fact, at the last earnings call, Elon did say that we are battery constrained, and we have to make the tough decision of saying how
Mhm.
much is it going to go stationary and how much are we going to put into vehicles moving storage. He
Right.
he also called it the same thing. Like, Tesla's really a battery company, and you can decide where to put it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to mention there. One is not all the batteries are the same. So
Mm.
the batteries that go in the Cybertruck are very different than the batteries that go into Megapacks, for example. They're not necessarily interchangeable, so that's important to know. And the second thing is that the vehicles themselves you could view as batteries backup storage. Some
Mm.
vehicles, like the Cybertruck, can be hooked up to your home to provide just that,
Yeah.
right? Other vehicles, Tesla vehicles, that's not yet available. But in essence, it's just a battery backup with wheels. And sure, you have the added benefit of moving people around. That's
Mhm.
cool too, right? So yeah, so they're not that dissimilar, really. The Megapack, however, doesn't have wheels, so it's a different looking vehicle than we're used to seeing. But
Sure.
I wanted to try to equate the two and at least put it in terms that I think anybody can understand.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're going to do. It's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. Okay.
So this is the traditional view of Tesla as an auto company, and here are the trailing 12-month um, reported deliveries for Tesla.
Hmm.
And so you can see from 2020 Q4, 500,000 vehicles on a 12-month basis, moving up to Q4 of 2023, up to 1.8 million. And since then, over the
I'm
last
sorry.
following 5 quarters,
I think you
the
misspoke.
number of vehicles,
Yeah. I think you
uh,
said Q4 2020 first. There was
yes,
500,000. Okay. I think you said
500,000.
2024. Okay.
So pretty good growth, right? We went from
Yep.
500,000 on a 12-month rolling basis up to 1.8 million. Pretty steady growth,
Yeah.
right? And that's pretty exciting for Wall Street analysts and any investors. But since then, the growth in the trailing 12 months number of vehicles has kind of stalled out.
Hmm.
Now, there's a lot of things going on here. There's a kind of a global recession in the automotive industry. It's not just a Tesla specific issue here. It's been a tough time for the auto business in general. And so if you just look at Tesla as an auto company, I see a lot of comments like this. Well, why would you pay 100 times earnings for a company that hasn't had any growth in its
Yeah.
in its business,
Yes.
right? And the image there on the top left is kind of the people with their hair on fire. They don't understand it,
Yep.
right? Particularly Wall Street analysts. So if we look at the next chart, this is the energy business, putting them in terms of vehicle equivalents.
Mm.
And so let's
Yes.
say that the average vehicle that Tesla sells has a battery pack of about 75 kilowatt hours
Yeah.
across the whole lineup of all the vehicles, some more, some less. And so if we do that, you can see that the energy business from Q1 of 2021 produced an equivalent of about 27,000 vehicles on the 12 months ending that date.
Hmm.
And you can see then the growth in the number of energy vehicles that have been produced since then. And basically now we're up to about 500,000 energy equivalents or vehicle
Yeah.
equivalents. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, in terms of the energy business and vehicle equivalents is about 500,000 vehicles. So if you considered energy to be a separate, auto division or separate brand of Tesla, Just like some car companies have different brands, you could say this is Tesla's energy brand of, vehicles with no wheels. They'd be making 500,000 of them, right? And the growth here has been pretty phenomenal, and you can see that's accelerated quite a bit over the last year. Just within a year, we've gone to a run rate of about 200,000, from 200,000 up to about 500,000. So let's combine the two of these. And how does the company look in terms of its two vehicle divisions, autos and energy, right? And if you look at the next chart, you can see what that looks like. So, yes, maybe the growth has slowed a little bit overall, but still the company's making progress, right? They're putting more vehicles that move people and vehicles that are stationary that just move electrons. They're putting more into service over time. And so
That's a yeah.
that's a good
So,
perspective, I think, right? Just to keep in
yeah.
mind, don't just look at Tesla as a car company. It is not just a car company, even excluding Robotaxi and Optimus. It's no longer just a car company.
Yeah, I really like this way to perspective. It's equivalent to 500,000 cars, and we're talking like 1.7 million cars per year. This is one quarter, right? Or this is
This is a trailing 12-month
trailing
period.
12 months, trailing 12 months.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So in a year, it's about that amount. So it's like it's
Yeah.
a good way to just kind of give it some perspective and context. Cern in the so right now, energy in terms of revenue, my understanding is the energy division is about 10%. So let's say in $100 billion per year revenue that Tesla got in 2024, 10 billion of that came from energy. Is that right? Is that around that?
I'd have to check my numbers. I think it might be a little bit higher than that, but it's growing rapidly. And then the other important thing to mention, and you're probably getting here, is the profitability of energy is higher than the profitability on the auto side,
Yeah. I guess what
right?
I'm saying is that if it's at 10% of your revenue, you're almost there. You're
Yeah.
there. I don't know what the actual number is, like 15% of your revenue. Then you go, oh yeah, Tesla's a car company and an energy business. You can't ignore the energy business once it's past 10%. That's just in general. That's what I'm just thinking in my head, right? It's like 15%, 20%. It's like, whoa, this is it, right?
Yeah, and the bigger it gets, the bigger the impact that the growth has on the overall business.
Yeah.
So if, for example, you have a business line that's like 1% of your revenue and it doubles, well, you barely
Yeah.
notice that.
Yeah.
Right, but if it's 10% of your business line and it doubles, you're gonna start to see that. It's going to materially impact the overall results, and we're getting
Mm-hmm.
to that point now for sure.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
the reason I say that too is that we're people are looking at the factories, how many vehicle factories, right, are be building, and they did not choose to build in Mexico. There's rumors that they're about to build a gigafactory in India, but there's reasons, right? Because the existing factories, they're going to go with the unbox model. They can increase the efficiency and throughput of those existing factories, but they're going to be building a megapack factory, if not one a year, maybe more than one a year, because it's so easy to build these things. $200 million, any kind of boxed building. They can use an old Target. They use an old any kind of building. They just take over, and then they can use that as a factory automatically, like within a year. So this business, if Tesla wanted to, will grow very fast.
yeah. There's a couple things there too. The return on investment of building a megapack factory is kind of off the charts compared to an automobile factory,
Yeah.
right? So that's one thing that's really exciting. It doesn't take as much capital to build a megapack factory, right? And by the way, that's the same reasoning applies there too to the humanoid bot side of the equation, but we're not quite there yet.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing is, what was I going to say? That the growth opportunity in energy is so enormous, and it's not dependent upon consumers making a decision to buy a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's driven by utility companies. It's driven by, in some cases, governments. It's driven by the underlying trends that we're seeing in terms of demand for energy. Right. So we've got a couple things. We've got utility grids that are overstressed, and so anything we can do to improve that is great. We've also seen for AI companies, um, XAI, for example, had a problem with the energy coming into their facility, into the Colossus facility, was fluctuating. And it was causing problems then when they were trying to run the models. They've got this energy fluctuation that's an issue. They had to sort of modulate that and basically clean it out and make sure that the energy is consistent and steady. And so they added some megapacks to do that. So as AI continues to grow and these data centers have these needs that are very different than traditional factories, the opportunity for megapacks is huge.
I once did research on how many AI data centers are going to be needed in the world and how fast and how, where. And it's massive because there's this move where they call it sovereign, right? Every single city, every single state, every single country will
Yeah.
want and need their own AI data warehouse. Every company will want to have something like that or shared. The demand is just through the roof. And then what you're saying is that, yeah, these Amazon built their AI data warehouse right in the same location as a nuclear power plant.
Mhm.
Others are doing it right beside, the Niagara Falls or some sort of waterfall. But that's just energy generation. They need something to smooth it out and then to, be able to adapt to the spikes and all that when the needs are. Elon talked about when you have 100,000 GPUs and they're all like a symphony, they're all working together. And sometimes like you need this much and then the need of that, and then it evens out and then it quiets down. And then uh, how do you manage that fluctuation of energy requirement? And you need
That's
the
right.
megapacks. Yeah, it's going to be massive
The
business. Yeah,
the other thing too that's worth mentioning is that there's an AI component to this business.
yeah,
So everybody knows that when Tesla sells a vehicle, they have an opportunity to sell FSD license, and eventually these vehicles could be robotaxis, right? That's AI powered. But a lot of people don't realize that for the energy business,
yeah.
Tesla also has AI powered software that's attached to that. It's called AutoBidder.
Hmm.
And it's a way to optimize the utilization of a megapack. And in some cases, for some clients, Tesla actually receives a cut of the revenue. And so that's also an interesting upside long term for Tesla, perhaps to be involved in maybe, in some cases, arbitraging the peaks and the valleys of energy prices. And there's been some case studies, some tests where they've done that, and they've actually made quite a bit of money. Not all markets allow Tesla to do that, but that is also an interesting component. Also, that when you install a megapack, there is probably a 20-year service contract that goes with it, and currently that's about 0.5% per year of the cost. Right, so it's not an insignificant amount of money. Now, how profitable is that service contract? I'm not sure, but once you've got this massive installed base, you're also going to have a pretty decent recurring revenue stream associated with
Recurring
it.
revenue stream. Yeah. So, sir, can you comment on this? Which is, I know you're famous for this, which is great. You have modeled out what's going to happen to the auto business, the energy business. You've also done one for robo taxi and robots, all the businesses that Tesla has, by the way. You've done a full unified report.
Mhm.
And I advise people, if you haven't seen, you go look for Cern in my channel. He's done many shows where he has shown many graphs and tables, and they are accurate, by the way. When you did them maybe 3 months ago, 6 months ago, they're turning out to be right online with what the CEOs of these robots companies are saying and what robotaxi numbers we're now seeing. It's all pretty close to accurate. I mean, the whole point of view was never to give you the number. It's always to show you how to calculate what the metrics were. And then you, as a viewer, can decide and you show the table. If you look at it from this this angle, then this is what you can see. You choose which one. Okay. My point was, so you got the auto business, and yeah, you can look at it saying it's kind of like stalling, recession, interest rates, those kind of things. But then you got the energy business, and you just showed today that if you look at it and you add it, we're growing really well. It's kind of like the problem, it's like a good problem to have for Tesla, right? Is that by the time that energy actually is equal to the, the entire auto business that we have today, it's like that's how funny this is, right? In just 3 years from now, I think my look at the tables, 3 years from now, the energy business will be the same size as how many cars we're selling today. And we're all quibbling about these, 20,000 less cars a quarter. It's like, dude. Now, my thing was that a problem we have is that robotaxi and bots is going to overtake energy, and that even energy, as fast as it's growing, will become, yeah, let's take a look at this other business. That's boring now, right?
That's
Like, can
right.
you Speak to that.
Well, the good news for the energy fans is I think energy will have a brief time to shine here. Energy will matter. It'll contribute really nicely to the overall business profitability for a period of time.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, the sooner that robotaxi becomes reality, then that makes that a moot point. And of course, the sooner that Optimus starts to be sold,
And that's a
that
mute point. Yeah.
that's a moot point. So
Moot.
energy is enjoying its day in the sun, pun intended, right now, right, and deservedly so. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not sure it's getting and it's a deserved attention, because right now people should analysts and investors should be looking at it, but they're not. And by the time they do, they're going to be like, oh, robotaxi.
maybe. Yeah, and if that's the case, it's unfortunate. It's unfair again to the Tesla energy fans out there, and there are a few of them. Um, but most Wall Street analysts are capable of looking at numbers, right, and understanding what they're looking at. So if they're not seeing Tesla energy,
Mhm.
that's a willful neglect on their part.
Yeah.
It's pretty plain to see if you spend any time with the income statement what's going on.
Mhm.
And so maybe once a quarter, the analysts look at it, and maybe some of them will be surprised, and maybe we'll see a few research notes that focus on Tesla energy for the first time ever.
I
Right?
I think what you've just showed me though is make me understand now that next year. Yeah, next year, I think, based on just the what you just showed here, that you can't just think about the growth of auto anymore. You need to add auto plus energy and the growth of that, because
Mhm.
it's really next year where it really you can't ignore it. I mean, the growth of the company is growing, and yeah, it's
If
always
the
what happened with Apple, right? And they had like, oh,
yeah,
you're a car, you're an iPhone business, and your iPhone is flattened and it's no longer growing. And then Apple's going, but we're services. Wait for our services. Wait for our services. And they ignored, and all of a sudden it became significant enough.
yeah.
You need to add the two together, and that's where we're at next year, I think. So,
If the trailing 12-month auto equivalents right now for energy are 500,000, a year from now that number could be close to 1,000,000.
which is too big to ignore. It's the
Right?
same, almost the same amount. Yeah.
It's too big to ignore at that point. Now, analysts
Yeah.
again may continue to ignore it because they're auto industry analysts, and that's part of the problem with
Right.
Tesla in terms of who's covering the company.
Good point. Yeah.
For the most part, they're auto industry people.
Okay, good. So thank you for doing all that work. I do like the way that you try to dumb it down to explain to people, and we need it. Like when I hear gigawatt hours, I have no idea how big it is, and all that. And when you make it to equivalents of cars, at least I have some sort of way to. And then I know that another chart you did, which is fantastic, is now you take a car and you make that equivalent to to bots,
Right.
and that's where it gets really fun. Um,
Yep.
so Tesla's mission has always been for years sustainable energy,
Mhm.
and they've moved now. In just the last all hands meeting, Elon started talking about sustainable abundance as the new term, sustainable abundance. So Tesla's impact. Tell me what that is to the world. Have they been making a dent? Or is it still upcoming in the future?
Yeah, and this I think is really interesting because the impact that Tesla has made actually is pretty staggering if you look at the numbers.
Okay.
Now, maybe on a percentage basis of total consumption of gasoline and that kind of thing, maybe it's still pretty small, but still, I think most people would look at the numbers that we're about to share and say that this is pretty significant.
Mm.
You've got to start somewhere, and initially you start from zero and you go from there. And so where Tesla is today, I think is pretty impressive. And you've got to say that this is helpful. Um, by the way, these numbers are just for the auto business, right? So we're excluding anything else here. We're just looking at the impact of
Yeah.
the vehicles that Tesla has delivered into the world so far, 7.5 million of them, and looking at the impact of that.
The impact. So first of all, it worked. What Tesla and Elon wanted to happen has happened, which is okay. Let me introduce a new drivetrain to electric vehicle, and you're going to show us how it's impacted the world. And then Tesla's now changed and forced every car company to switch over to electric vehicles. That's almost like a done deal. Maybe more visible in other countries than the US, because the US is lagging, but every other country out there, there's no more debate. They're all
Yep.
moving to electric vehicles.
And
So
then
now it's, yeah.
and then I was just going to add, Herbert, when you turn on autonomy,
Yeah,
then
that was
that's
going to
when
say. Yeah.
that's when this really gets going.
Right. And so that's
Yep.
what I'm going to say. Like this
Yep.
isn't even including the autonomy part, which is when you take those vehicles and then you like 5x them in terms of impact. So I just want to
Yep.
put it in the context. Okay, great,
Yep.
great, great. Okay.
So this is a post I did today and took a look at put some numbers around the annualized gallons of gasoline saved and a rough estimate of the amount of money saved on an annualized basis. So
Mm,
where Tesla's worldwide fleet is now, right? Assuming that the average car travels 13,500 miles a year and the average gas car gets 32 miles a gallon, right? And gas costs 3.25 a gallon. Now that may be a US number. In other parts of the world, it's a lot higher than that.
yeah.
Okay. So this impact probably is understated in terms of worldwide impact. But if you look at the fleet of, 7.5 million vehicles, and I recognize not all of them are still in use, many of them have crashed and so on, but just rough numbers. You're looking at about 3.2 billion gallons of gasoline saved every single year,
Mm.
right? Now, that may be a proverbial drop in the bucket in terms of the amount of gasoline that we actually consume in the world, right? It's a
Mhm.
staggeringly large number. But still, in my book, 3.2 billion gallons of gasoline is a big number, right? It's a material amount of gasoline that we're not using anymore in those vehicles. And then in terms of the dollars saved, it's $10 billion of money that would have been spent on gasoline that would have gone to oil and gas companies.
Per year.
Now
Yeah.
again, 10 billion may be a drop in the bucket,
Mhm.
but it's a pretty good start, and you can see how this is ramping up pretty seriously as Tesla continues to sell vehicles. Right, it wasn't that long ago where the impact was only $1 billion a year. Now it's 10x that in just a few short years.
Yep.
So it could 10x again in a few short years.
2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, we're just getting started on this. Autonomy is going to accelerate this even further over the next few years. So as vertical as this chart looks now, just wait. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, sorry. I should have shown this one. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a little bit clearer chart.
Yeah.
Right. So we
Yeah.
were we were at $1 billion in savings, probably back in 2018 sometime,
Mhm.
maybe early 2019. So only 5 years ago. So it's 10x in 5 years in terms of the amount of money saved on not spent on
Mhm.
gasoline. Now, this $10 billion of savings didn't necessarily go into the Tesla owners' pocketbooks, but a lot of it did.
Yep.
They had to spend some of it on charging costs and so on. Most people charge at home where the cost is a lot less than at a supercharger. So they saved a lot of money. They didn't save 10.4 billion, but they would have saved a lot of that. But at the very least, that money did not go to oil and gas companies
Mhm.
or oil and gas countries, right?
Mhm.
So that's favorable. That's a really positive step, and I continue to track this and make some estimates around that. These are really rough numbers, but I think directionally it's accurate. Now, there's also some other benefits.
Mm.
Um, so we talked about the gasoline saved. We talked about the amount of gasoline saved and the amount of dollars that is. And if you flip to the next one, Herbert, it also means we don't need as many gas stations.
Yep.
Now, whether any gas stations have actually shut down or not remains to be seen. But eventually they will be because the demand for fuel will go down. And unless these gasoline stations adapt in some way and attract EV drivers or robo taxis somehow,
Mhm.
then they won't be needed anymore. So at some point, and we haven't reached any tipping point on this yet, I don't think, except perhaps in countries like Norway, where the amount of EVs on the road is very large as a percentage of the total. I
Yeah.
think more than 50% now in Norway.
Yeah. They've
And
gone.
virtually every new car that's sold is an EV,
No more gas stations there. Mhm.
right? The gas stations have already had to adapt or die.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, 7.5 million people plus their families, they don't have to stop at these nasty gas stations anymore. And in fact, gas stations now have to step up their game and make themselves more attractive for people to stop. Now, gas stations make most of their money from the convenience side of the store rather than selling gasoline. The gasoline was a way to get you into the gas station to buy stuff. So if gas stations don't turn themselves into like a Buc-ee's where it's like become a destination for people, they're not going to see as many customers.
Yeah, actually,
Also, just
gas
in terms
stations
of
actually love the transition to electric vehicles. Surprisingly, they'll make more money.
yeah,
People go in and spend more time inside their, into their thing and store, and yeah, eat more there. They make more money.
well, and that's just the thing too, because it does take a little bit longer to charge a vehicle than it does to fill it up with gas. You're going to spend more time at that gas station location or that convenience location if there's a charging infrastructure there, and you're likely then to spend more money. So yes, they do like that. Just in terms of mechanics, in terms of the software recalls,
Yes,
right? There's over-the-air updates to solve these recalls that we hear about. I think it was
yes,
about 90, if I remember correctly, 95% or 98% of Tesla's recalls last year were solved with over-the-air software updates. So that's pretty nice. People are avoiding the hassle of having to go back to the car dealership and dealing with them for
hmm
any kind of recall issue. Okay. And not to mention the fact that for a lot of routine maintenance like rotating tires, Tesla will actually come to you for that work. So that made it even more convenient. Yeah. And then another benefit, and this is another sort of oil and gas thing, is no oil changes anymore. I don't know of anybody that is sad that they don't have to put oil in their Tesla.
hmm
And I estimate that's about 25 million gallons of
that's a
motor
lot.
oil a year
Yeah.
that's being saved by the fleet currently. And that assumes if you changed oil every 5,000 miles and use 5 quarts of oil, that's a rough number.
hmm
Right. So it's not just gasoline, but it's, it's also oil and maybe some other lubricants and stuff as well. And then, of course, 7.5 million fewer tailpipes means better air
Nice.
quality,
Yeah.
right? Which means improved health for asthmatics, and less respiratory illness.
Yeah.
Also, because EVs tend to use regenerative braking instead of the actual brakes, there's less brake dust that's being spewed into the air, and that's also making communities healthier. Now, are we at the tipping point on any of that yet? Perhaps not, but certainly in countries like Norway, they certainly would be.
hmm I
Okay.
mean, in China, there are already reports, and again, they're nowhere near. There's so much pollution that's happening there, but there, you'll see like a pocket of a city, and almost all the cars are being driven are EVs now, right?
Yeah.
In that area, and first of all, it's the noise pollution is just dropped. You don't hear anything anymore, and then you can actually sense the air and the pollution is it really is much better. So it's starting to be
Mm.
significant enough that you can actually see it and feel it.
And and the lack of noise pollution actually is kind of a profound thing. I've heard from people that have experienced that. They've gone to a city where there's a high EV density, and they're kind of amazed that they can hear sounds that they couldn't hear before, like sounds of birds and things like that, and they don't realize they're still in a city.
Yeah.
Right? So that's gonna be interesting too as people get to experience more of that. And it'll make, those inner cities perhaps more livable, more desirable to be in if they are quieter, healthier places.
The world is changing and hopefully for the better, how these cities are redesigned. And then again, this doesn't even include robotaxi. When that happens, boy, I mean, so some people are saying, I think ARK Invest, they're actually estimating that there might be more cars, more traffic with robotaxi than less. So I
Yeah.
mean, because more people will want to drive, like to transport when it's like you don't have to drive and you can just like watch a movie and you can even eat in your car. Why not just stay in your car? Let you take more, so more destination trips will happen, and then that will counter any kind of reduction in car ownership.
Yeah, I think this remains to be seen in terms of just how this, does the demand for transportation go up materially before the price comes down? I think the answer is likely no, right? You get higher demand only once prices have come down.
Right.
Um, when will prices come down? Well, it'll come down when there's a lot of robo-taxis in service, and so that will take some time. Now, Elon is certainly hoping to turn the Tesla fleet on, but the question is how quickly will that happen? I do expect that there'll be some implementation challenges because let's just imagine a world where half of the cars are autonomous and half of them are human driven. You're going to have a few issues with that. So it may force governments, city planners to kind of rethink the way the roadways are structured. There may be autonomous only lanes or roads
Mm. Hmm.
just to make transportation that much more efficient. Or certain times a day, for example, when humans are not allowed to drive on certain roads.
Hmm.
So some of those things will be done. And we did exactly the same thing, by the way, when gas powered cars started to appear. Right? We didn't have paved roads; we had dirt roads, and the vehicles with their tires made ruts in the roads, and so there was a huge outcry to make better roadways. Also, gasoline stations were not conveniently located, and they eventually decided to put them basically right next to the road to make them as convenient as possible. And gasoline stations got exemptions from setback laws that other buildings had. So, necessity is the mother of invention with all these things.
Yeah.
And so you can't just look at the world through what we see today and how it's designed because everything's going to change. And it'll probably change very quickly, just like it did when the automobile was first introduced.
Hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's things that we're not even considering today that will be changed because it just makes sense to.
Hmm.
And the main one I think is, again, when we think about our road system, do we really want human driven vehicles on the same roads as autonomous ones? That may prove to be a highly inefficient way of doing things. Right. Just like today, for example, you wouldn't really want people riding their bicycles on a high-speed road.
Yeah.
One, for the safety of the bicycle riders, but also just in terms of traffic flow. It's
Mm.
not a good situation to be in. So, I think it'll force a lot of planners to reconsider the way their cities are designed.
I mean, today there's many cities, like I think Hong Kong, Singapore, Philippines, where like only today only odd license numbers can drive into the city. Tomorrow it's the only even numbers. And that's how they can control the congestion. Yeah, I'm not an optimist. I still think that at the end of the day, there's too much car ownership, and then that leads to uh, all the issues that we're facing. So even though that there is going to be more traffic because more trips are being done, there's going to be less car ownership, and there'll be more of the right cars, which is more autonomous, more AVs, and then that alone, and then less parking. No need for I'm very happy with more traffic if there's less parking, garages, and paved cities, and get back to some parks. And then if you can walk and appreciate nature more, and then call an autonomous car to pick up wherever you happen to be at the moment. So I think, I'm very optimistic. I think it's a utopia of a city, but yeah, I mean, perverse incentives always happen, right? Something you didn't think about, and all of a sudden it's like, damn it, it was supposed to solve this problem, and it completely caused the opposite, right? So
One of the things that's really obvious to me is you think about, like, New York City,
yeah,
and let's say you've got on-street parking.
yeah,
To me, in an autonomous vehicle world, you have to get rid of that. You can't allow anybody to park on the street anymore because you're
yes,
going to need those extra lanes that are for parking for basically one big drop off zone.
yeah,
Because otherwise, if you have cars that are parked there, then the drop off zone becomes the street.
yeah.
You can't have that because then you're going to have massive congestion, all these vehicles waiting, picking up people and waiting and people getting in and out. You're blocking the street every time. So
I
you
mean,
have to
they
have
they
a
have
way.
they have taxis already though, so those taxis are doing that already,
Right, but this
picking
is
up and
at
dropping.
scale. This is taxis times 10.
Yeah.
So you pretty much have to get rid of, in my opinion, in some situations like that, on-street parking entirely and make the whole thing a drop-off zone.
Yeah, that makes sense. In
Right.
Vancouver, Canada, they did that, right? Certain streets, they just said no more parking. No, in fact, no cars driving through here,
Yeah.
and then letting it pedestrian. I think that that's the case. And then remember during COVID when they had to let the restaurants have outdoor seating. Those
Mm.
were the wonderful days that you see these outdoor seatings right on the street and park.
Yeah.
And so then they limited you car parking there, but then they to turn into tables. And I was like, wow, this is so much nicer as a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think maybe there's opportunities for some more of
yeah,
that as well. And
All
you'd
right.
want to sit outside on the street if you don't have to deal with the pollution and the noise,
The noise. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. So, Cern, thank you very much for that. This was, again, you come with data that makes it easy for people to understand the impact, in this case, the impact, but also before that, we were talking about energy storage, equivalents of vehicles, and, put everything in perspective. Things are going well if you don't just look at just vehicles, look at everything else that's going on, energy, robotaxi, and the impact to the world. That's what many of us has invested in Tesla for because of that, and it's happening. It has happened and it's happening.
They are making a big impact on the world today. And I think if we look at it over the next 2 or 3 years, that impact is going to be
Yeah.
massively multiplied. Yeah.
Another show we might do is this transition of sustainable energy to sustainable abundance. So the
Mhm.
mission of Tesla has changed to now sustainable abundance. And to really, I know you've touched on it, like in every one of your shows and every one of your research, you kind of touched into what the future of abundance could look like because of robots, because of autonomy and all these things. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like now that Tesla has come out and said our new mission is sustainable abundance, remember we did one show where you calculated what is universal income,
Mhm.
and then Elon keeps saying it's universal high income, not low, right? Right? It's going to be some sort of high amount of money people will be paid. How much? You know, if you're a robot vendor and you sell your uh, uh, robots to a company or to the country, you propose that before one idea to consider is a tax, and how much that tax could then supplement the people that are fired, or as part of the universal income, right? So I'd be curious to see.
Yeah. These are difficult things to wrap your mind around, and I need to spend some more time thinking about it. But the one thing I think we know is that robotaxi is a deflationary force on the world
Mm-hmm.
economy. Good kind of deflation. It's going to reduce transportation costs. So that's clear. Good deflation like that is a good thing overall.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly there are people that have their livelihoods as drivers. But we've been through this kind of change before in society, right? We had people that were telephone operators that are no
Mm-hmm.
longer, and yet
Mm-hmm.
the economy didn't crash. So good deflation is helpful. Then along comes humanoid robots. And for the first time in human history, we're going to have a form of labor that can outcompete humans on every level, right? They can work 7,000 hours a year instead of 2,000. And there's so many advantages. I've talked about many of them before. So this is the kind of good deflation that that's really hard to understand because it's has the potential to put every single human laborer out of work. And by the way, just AI not in a humanoid form has the potential to put non-laborers out of work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is where it gets really tough because at the limit we can produce anything and everything we want. But if no one has a job, how does that work?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get to the point where we need a whole new system. How does that look? These are big, tough questions, right? But just as a thought experiment, if you can produce everything you want cheaply, then we will. Just because people don't have incomes, that's not a limiting factor. That's just the function of our economic system needs to change, right? So anyway, yeah, we do need to think about this more deeply and dive into it. I don't know that I have all the answers on that. It's a fascinating thing to begin thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sustainable energy is now becoming sustainable abundance. So it's good for us to like start wrapping our heads around what does that mean? And because that will give us a guidance of like what would Tesla's strategy be? What would Elon's strategy be? How is he thinking of this?
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Cern. Always love your insights and reports. We're really appreciative of that. The audience is always so thankful to you. Follow Cern on his X account at Cern Basher. You can subscribe to him and get these reports even sooner. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.